Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of On the Ballot. I'm your host, Norm Leahy. I'm a senior editor here at Ballotpedia, and one of the things that we try to do is to keep you abreast of what's going on in Capitol Hill, particularly in relation to the budget process, which seems to be a bit, well, there's a bit of a tussle underway right now. And joining us to help figure out what's going on, why, and who the major players are, Burgess Everett, who's the congressional bureau chief with Semafor, a great publication that if you don't subscribe to, please do. Burgess, thanks for joining us on the ballot.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Norman.
Now, before we get into the weeds, what's the general mood on Capitol Hill at the current moment?
I mean, it's pretty low, honestly. This has been a tough year, even going back to last summer with the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, killings, murders of the state lawmaker in Minnesota, and obviously now the shooting, killing, assassination of Charlie Kirk. I mean, so I think a lot of Republicans, especially this week, have been feeling that because I know he's not a member of Congress, but he has these close relationships with them, akin to a member. I think a lot of these members feel like he was one of them because of how long he's been involved in conservative politics. And so, I mean, it was a chilling event. And I think one unusual thing about politics is that you have to compartmentalize these things because you're a member of Congress who's also doing all these other things. So, I mean, just think about yesterday, people are mourning Charlie Kirk. They're mourning 9/11. And the Senate Republicans are changing the Senate rules on the Senate floor to make Trump's nominees easier to confirm. And they're fighting about a government shutdown. So these things are all happening at once. And I do think people do have to kind of put to the side how they're feeling sometimes because they also need to deal with the day's business.
And speaking of the business, you have a new piece out about the latest developments in this discussion, debate, whatever you want to call it, about the federal budget. What's the elevator pitch? Where do things stand right now?
I mean,
are we going to get hit?
Democrats have been laying the groundwork for months to keep a position after they got real divided in March about funding the government under we call a CR. It's a stopgap continuing resolution. That might make people kind of glaze over, but that's a government funding bill. And in the absence of doing things through regular order, which does not happen in Congress anymore, the government shuts down if you don't pass some of these. So it's very important. Basically, what's happened this week is Senator Schumer, along with Hakeem Jeffries, these are the Democratic leaders, they've really stiffened their spine and said, we are not going to support a short-term spending bill that we have no input on, and we want healthcare language in this legislation. It's a little nebulous what that would be. There's expiring Affordable Care Act credits that Democrats are really worried about. So, right now, if Republicans try to run the same play they did in March, which is jam a spending bill through the House with no Democratic votes and then kind of jam Senate Democrats, which have to decide whether they let a bill through or not, unlike the House, because you need 60 votes in the Senate, I think the government would likely shut down if that scenario plays out again. And all signs point to that happening again. If House Republicans can pass a spending bill, it seems like Democrats will block it and the government will shut down as of today.
And on the Republican side, what is it that they're all is not unity and dedication on the Republican side? Is that fair to say, especially in the House?
I think that's fair, but I think the challenging thing is the dynamic has changed. Trump is such an effective whip and vote getter in the House that House Republicans who would never vote for these spending bills before have been doing so. And it's totally flipped the dynamic. Democrats used to be able to sit back, watch the House Republicans struggle to do something like this, and then they can step in and say, okay, we will help you fund the government, but we want X, Y, and Z. If House Republicans don't need their votes to pass something in the House, that is not happening. And that is the different dynamic here right now. So I do think House Republicans have to be unified to make this approach work. They were in March. I haven't seen a sign that they're not now, even though you are correct. They disagree a ton about how much to fund the government, how much to spend, whether they should have earmarks, all that. But if Trump tells them pass this continuing resolution, there's no evidence that they're not going to do it at this point. And that's what's changed the game for Senate Democrats.
Which makes it interesting to me that in your coverage of this, and even in your most recent piece, you talk about Senator Schumer pining for a bipartisan angle to this funding. Is that realistic? Is that going to happen?
I think not in the short term. It does not seem like it. Republicans, the Republican leaders are not saying we're going to throw Democrats a bone by funding these Affordable Care Act tax credits that are expiring. I think as a bridge to a bipartisan deal, yes, that could happen. I think Republicans recognize in November or December, whenever they rely on these holidays often to create these bipartisan deals. I think Republicans understand they would eventually have to show some give to Democrats at some point in this, but not right now. And I think that's the big challenge. And I it's hard for me to see Republicans sort of coming to the table and saying, yes, we'll do whatever you want to Democrats. I mean, it's just hard for me to imagine right now.
And I know that one of the points of difficulty is the rescissions that Republicans have made, the money that's been appropriated that the administration decided not to spend. Once upon a time, this was called impoundment. Back, gosh, what was it in the Nixon years? Is that still an issue? Is that still something where we're talking about, or are we kind of moved on?
No, certainly. I mean, Democrats are talking a lot about healthcare, but really the issue is much broader. I mean, their activist base and the members themselves, they want to fight Trump as hard as possible right now. And rescissions is part of that. Healthcare is part of that. The way that Trump's dismantled government agencies and fired appointees is part of that. I mean, they feel like this is a big hair on fire moment, and that is what's driving this as much as anything, as any specific policy dispute, is all of the things that we're talking about.
Well, and one of the things that they also have to worry about, of course, is the calendar. And the government budget runs out, what, September 30th? Is that correct? End of fiscal year?
Yes.
So is there literally enough time on the clock for them to get something done?
Yeah, there always is. I mean, they can act fast if they want to. The really tricky thing here is that there's some Jewish holidays coming up, and there's a recess scheduled then, and it's hard for me to see them funding the government before that. We might see an attempt next week. We might not. They might wait until the last second before September 30th to make a move, and that makes things more tricky because the House can kind of do things on their own schedule, even though people may complain about it and say they need more time to review, etc. The Senate, you need all 100 senators to say we're voting on this right now if you need to move quickly. And so I could see it being a pretty hairy few weeks here.
And back to your most recent reporting on this, I was interested in one line you had in this, and this is in Burgess's view at the bottom of the article, where you talk about that it's hard to get out of a shutdown, no matter how unified your party is.
Yeah.
And that forced me to go and look at 2019, when there was when the government shut down for 34 days.
Yeah.
And we eventually got out of it. It doesn't seem like there was too much damage done, but is it different this time? If we get into a shutdown this time, would it be nearly impossible to get out of it?
I would say the better parallel is probably the 2013 shutdown, because the 2018 shutdown was a partial government shutdown. They had actually funded some agencies of government already, and so it wasn't as debilitating. This one would be more akin to the 2013 shutdown, when Republicans, led by conservatives like Ted Cruz, wanted to defund Obamacare as a condition for funding the government, which Democrats obviously didn't want to do. And the government shut down, and Democrats did not move an inch on this. And it eventually opened back up, and it definitely cost the economy money. Similarly, Trump wanted border wall money in 2018, partial government shutdown, government opens up. Democrats did not give him any border money. So it's really hard to go in with a demand, and then if you don't get it and the government shuts down, to get that demand fulfilled. Usually the majority party just sits and waits for the other side to realize we can't get the crap kicked out of us anymore for the shutdown and reopen things. One thing that's changed in the Democratic Party, though, is that kind of these conservative Democrats are mostly gone. Someone like Joe Manchin, Joe Donnelly in the past would have said, I can't oversee this shutdown. This is no good. And they would put pressure on leadership to reopen the government. I don't know that that'll happen this time. The only person who really sounds like that is John Fetterman, and he doesn't really go to caucus meetings or have a ton of sway inside the caucus in the same way. So that's another dynamic to keep your eye on. Is there may not be a ton of people looking for a way out immediately.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned the 2013 shutdown because that overlapped with the Virginia governor's race that year and
mhm.
may possibly have affected the outcome of that contest, which ended up being uh, close in the end. But we'll see about that. But there was another part in your piece where you talk, and this came up in March, the last time we were sort of at this juncture, about questions of Chuck Schumer's leadership of the Democrats in the Senate. And you come across that says in your reporting, he's pretty safe. Is
Yep.
that still so?
Yeah, I think more so. I think
Okay.
because he's trying to avoid this situation where 10 of his people vote to advance a government funding bill and everybody else is really mad about it, and he's getting pummeled by House Democrats and Senate Democratic candidates. I mean, look, like he's got to manage all these primaries now. Some of these candidates are saying they won't support him as leader. I mean, there's a lot. He knows that there's a microscope on him. He knows he's under a lot of pressure. He's reacting to it. You can see it. He's forcing votes on Jeffrey Epstein files and taking a hard line on the shutdown. So he recognizes there's this threat out there in the Democratic caucus. I don't think he's in any trouble if he keeps his position right now. If he were to blink at the last minute, I think he would probably invite more opposition than he's feeling right now. But it seems like if you had, this doesn't happen, but it seems like if you had a leadership election right now, he would be fine, although he might lose a couple people.
Hmm. Well, let's do something dangerous then, shall we?
Sure.
Let's prognosticate. Let's. What are your odds right now that the government does shut down?
Say like 60%.
Really? Okay. And then let's go a little bit further. Do you think that even though you say it's hard to get out of one, what sort of a deal could be struck to get us out of one? Or would there be any sort of deal at all?
I would say some sort of IOU deal, which is uh, we get nothing in the immediate, but promise to talk about maybe a bigger deal on healthcare or something like that, or rescissions. I'm not sure. A lot of times you would say, for example, Democrats oversaw a brief shutdown in 2018 over immigration policy, and the government reopened because they got an immigration debate. The immigration bills all failed, but they got a debate and floor votes. Maybe something like that. I mean, those are the sort of things that the majority party will offer the minority party.
And to think to take it away from a Washington focus, how does a shutdown play generally out among voters? Understanding that most voters in an off year like it is right now
Yeah.
are not absolutely engaged with what's going on in Congress. What's the how do you think this plays back home?
I think in the short term, a government shutdown would be probably bad for Democrats. I think people don't really pay attention to this stuff until it starts affecting them. A full government shutdown would start affecting them. Let's say you're trying to go to a national park. Trump makes it as hard as possible to go to a national park. The president kind of starts to have more power during a shutdown to decide, how painful to make it. And let's say people are flying into the World War II memorial and they're not being allowed to go there. I mean, you can see where this goes. People can get their passports renewed. Like all of these things could start grinding to a halt. That would be unpopular. I think people dislike government in the abstract, but when it's not working for them and some function of it is off, that's when they notice and they start keying in. And I think it would get more painful over time. I don't know exactly how the public would view who is to blame for this. Although, if there's a government funding bill and Democrats block it on the Senate floor, I think it's logical to assume from there a lot of people would blame Democrats because they would be actually taking the vote to shut the government down. Flip side of that, Republicans are in control of all government. They seem to be not wanting to meet with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And so the Democrats would say they'll blame Republicans because they are all in control. I think it's tough to predict, and there would be polling right away probably to show us how that was playing, and that would probably start to drive some of the decision making.
Right. And in addition to what you described earlier, these, what was it called? The Washington Monument Strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, shut the Washington Monument, and people start paying because it plays on TV.
Yeah. And the other thing is our media has become very DC centric now.
Yeah.
And so things that happen here, I mean, just look at the the National Guard mobilization and the takeover of police. Things that happen here get way more attention than anywhere else because our political coverage is so centered on Washington, DC now.
Well, and of course, we will be following this story because it is important. Having a functioning government is in the interest of everyone. And for our listeners, you can learn more about the shutdown on the links on the show notes as well. I will link to Burgess's most recent reporting as well. Burgess Everett, the Congressional Bureau Chief for Semafor, thank you for joining us to walk us through these issues today.
Sure, Norman. Thanks for your interest.
And to the rest of you, we'll have a new episode coming out soon. And until then, I'm Norm Leahy, and I will see you on the digital pages of Ballotpedia.